Hi, this is Annie Fox for Family Confidential, Secrets of Successful Parenting. My guest today is Dr. Andrew Schlegelmilch, a clinical psychologist who specializes in working with individuals on the autism spectrum and their families. Andrew is also the head psychologist at Orion Academy in Moraga, California, where he works with high school students on the spectrum and teaches a class on sex and dating. Hi, Andrew. Welcome to Family Confidential.
Hi, Annie. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're quite welcome. You know, you and I met, seems to be about a month ago when I came to Orion Academy, and I had the pleasure, distinct pleasure, of sitting in on a seminar you were doing about teens and sex. Now, that's my bailiwick. I love talking about teens and sex. I love talking to parents and to students about this kind of stuff.
Okay.
But your student population is unique. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Orion Academy is a high school, college preparatory high school designed specifically for kids on the spectrum, and especially for high-functioning kids. So really smart, intelligent kids with who were formerly diagnosed with things like Asperger's, but also nonverbal learning disabilities and other related neurocognitive disorders. So very intelligent, verbal, talkative kids who have very specific problems in socializing and organizational skills and those kinds of things, which makes talking about sex and dating extremely fun and entertaining and rewarding for me.
Well, I laughed a lot as I was sitting in your seminar and took lots of notes because there were some gems that you were recounting. And I wonder if you could share with our listeners just some of the, what I would say unusual, at least unusual for neurotypical teens, unusual questions that your students have about sex and dating.
Okay. Well, I always like to start off when people ask my opinion on this. I like to start off with my favorite interaction. I was called in because I'm we have a couple of psychologists on staff, but I'm the only male psychologist. So I get to talk with the boys about sex, and I always like to start off with lists. And so I just asked the guys, I said, let's name all the reasons that you can think of why people have sex. And these kids are not embarrassed in the traditional ways by talking about sex. I just enjoy the openness. So I was in my mind preparing, I could think of maybe like 5 reasons why people have sex, emotional closeness and this and that. These kids came up with 17 reasons that people might have sex, and they were all valid. And I started with a little area of the board to write on, and I filled up the entire board. So so if you can imagine.
No, I can't. Go ahead.
Well, if you can imagine, this level of sort of like openness to the topic and maybe lack of social constraints, like I'm a psychologist or a teacher and an adult, and if all those barriers were gone, and you had questions about sex, what would they be? And so those are kind of the questions that I get.
You got to give me some maybe in the 10 through 15 range on their list.
Well, they have a lot of questions. They have a lot of procedural questions. They have a lot of things that I get the sense that, like, somebody asked a question, I remember, do you have to take your pants off to have sex? And, and the answer is, depends, what kind of pants you're wearing. And but just real practical. But also there's a lot of very much like trying to discover a different culture about why would people want to be physically intimate. If you can imagine kids with a lot of sensory issues, and especially problems with touch and lots of other anxieties around that. They can't imagine why people would want to be physically intimate. So, and this is not everybody, but you get those share of questions in that range, in that area as well.
And so here you are, you're essentially talking to them as a neurotypical male to a group of neuroatypical young men, and trying to explain stuff to them. I'm curious about the understanding barrier and what happens as your information comes through and gets caught up somewhere, and how they're perceiving it. This seems fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, I have spent years working with these kids, and really, I work in a school, so I see them every day,
Mhm.
and we have formal contact every day, but we also have informal contact every day. So 180 days a year. And in some cases, during the school year, I will see these kids, I'll have more contact with them than their parents do. So, in some cases. So they trust me, they understand me as an authority, but also I've learn to and you have to kind of get good at being explicit and not like sexually explicit, but explicit in using correct language and thorough explanations for everything. So it's kind of a way of interacting that you just kind of pick up and learn. So after you establish credibility, you just start a dialogue, and I'll say, make a statement and follow with, does this make sense? And
This makes
and yes or
sense.
no, and then well, tell me what you understand by that,
I
and what
see.
are you thinking, and repeat that back to me, and you see what comes back and that kind of thing. So.
And so I'm wondering then, what is the goal in terms of your teaching?
Mhm.
You're you've got a population that has issues, as you say, some of them sensory issues,
Mhm.
getting closeness, attachment issues,
Right.
being able to read social cues and all of that stuff. And so
Right.
I'm wondering, yeah, what is the goal? Not to turn them into pseudo neurotypical kids because they are who they
Right.
are.
Right. The goal is, and it's you want these kids to be happy. You want
Yeah.
them to have as many opportunities as possible. And I think too often you get the I don't understand it, or it makes me anxious, and so therefore I just won't do it. And so I like to do my best to kind of eliminate as many barriers as possible. And as long as those barriers are about experience or about understanding or procedural barriers, we can deal with that. We can take care of that. We can eliminate those. And I'd really like a kid to say, I get it and I understand it, but I'm not interested. I want them to be able to get to that point if they're not going to partake.
I got
Um,
it.
we're,
Oh,
we're really open with these kids that they represent a small minority of people, small but growing minority, growingly vocal minority, but a minority nonetheless, and that the world was not necessarily created for or by them. But that doesn't mean that they can't be successful and be happy and achieve the things that they wanna do.
I love when you say help them overcome procedural barriers. I think
Yeah.
that's really important. And that was one of the takeaways I got from your seminar as I was
Okay.
sitting there listening.
Okay.
Um, you posed a challenge to them in
Hmm.
terms of how can you increase the likelihood that the person you're asking out on a date will actually say yes. This is a
Right.
procedural
Right.
barrier that you were
Yeah.
helping with them. So can you
Yeah.
share with our listeners, please, some of the
Hmm.
things you told them? If you want to up your chances of the girl or the guy saying yes to your invitation, what do you do?
Right. There's a bunch, and I think that there's a lot that goes without saying for most kids, but not necessarily for this population.
For
So,
example.
for example, the one that the parents responded really well to when I was given this talk was the hygiene piece. If you smell bad, or look disgusting, or look dirty, or you can't really smell yourself, or if you don't shower regularly, or if your clothing is offensive or whatever, which are all kind of common issues with this population, the person is that you're asking out is less likely to say yes.
Okay.
And while we can never guarantee success and that kind of thing, we can do a lot to sort of increase the chances of yes. The other one that just kind of occurred to me while I was some student asked me, well, how do you ask somebody out on a date? And I said, the right answer is, well, you just go up and ask. But for our students who have organizational deficits, um, there needs to be a certain level of specificity when you're asking a person out on the date. Because I'd listen to these invitations and they would sound something like, you want to go out sometime? And the person would say, sure. And then my student would just, great, and then walk away and never come back to the conversation. But having some sort of level of, would you like to go out with me this Friday to see a movie?
Okay, that's specific. That's good.
That's much more specific, and it's not, you're not overly specific, like, and watch this movie that I have to watch and then get, popcorn at 30 minutes in, and then, use the bathroom at 45 minutes. And so not that level of specificity, but something that offers some help to the person who is organizationally challenged.
This is great. Okay, so the two things that I've just heard you said, which increase their chances of getting a date, I could also understand that parents would be very, very happy that the kids were working on these things, because I can imagine something like, I don't want to take a shower. No, I live and sleep in these jeans and this shirt, and I don't
Right.
ever want you to launder it. That these things could become challenges for parents at home. And here
Yeah.
you're saying, okay, I've got something else. I'm not your parent, but you say you're interested in dating. And you can understand about increasing your chances or decreasing your chances. So here's something you can work on to increase your chances. And then home life also may become a beneficiary of this. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think, the savvy parent uses any sort of incentive or potential incentive to motivate the behaviors that they think will lead to success in the future. So, if your child expresses an interest in dating or wanting to have a girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, you can start to ask those questions of, do you think how you look right now is going to increase or decrease the chances? Or how you smell right now? Do you think somebody wants to smell you during, a 2-hour movie or not? The same goes with getting a part-time job or, anything else. We want to encourage our kids toward independence and wanting to make something of their life. And so the savvy parent uses these opportunities to sort of point back at the self, back at the child, and say, well, what can you do to make sure that happens?
This is awesome. Okay, now one thing I also took away from your seminar was the breakup plan,
Yeah.
which I thought was brilliant. And because I work with all kinds of teens, you know,
Yeah.
I just took it to my heart, and I thought, oh, this is really excellent
Yeah.
information. Can you share with us, first of all, why you created a breakup plan?
Right,
It's
right.
almost like what do they call it before people? A prenup
The
agreement.
prenuptial, yeah. Yeah. No, this is, it's, I think it's probably based on the same concept nobody's in the right mind when you despise somebody enough to want to break up with them. So you make plans before that so that it's, and everybody knows what they're getting into. There's a couple of things that make a breakup plan, and I can share with you some details on that, but a couple of things which inspired me to make a breakup plan. The one is that breakups are hard. I think dating relationships and romantic relationships are hard, and just about every teenager, neurotypical or not, I talk to underestimates how difficult they are and how challenging they are, and not just like, procedurally, when do we start holding hands kind of thing, but just emotionally, they're hard. So there's a lot of stress. People aren't usually thinking wonderfully. And the kids that I work with can sometimes have a lot of perseverative thoughts and behaviors, like, and then some beliefs about who is wrong and who has to admit what, and that kind of thing. So right after relationships end, there's this like flurry of turmoil for about 24 to 48 hours, where each person wants the other to admit that they were wrong, and to apologize and to bow and scrape and make sure that everything gets worked out and I was right, you were wrong kind of stuff.
Do your teens typically go to social media and engage other people to their side of the feud?
No, that's kind of
Okay.
that's kind of the interesting piece. What they'll do if they use social media is they will pester the other person. Apologize. Why aren't you writing me back? I hate you too. And leads to disruption in sleep and throws off the whole schedule. Everything shuts down. So we needed a specific set of instructions for our kids. And what I found is that if they can just leave it alone, it's like a cut or a scab or something. If they'll just leave it alone, without a whole lot of tending to it, it'll heal and it'll be okay.
How long do they need to leave it alone?
Like 48 hours is what I can tell the time it takes for many of these kids to just move on.
Just 2 days.
It's a real kind of out of sight, out of mind mentality. And it's very much of like a compartmentalization of events and relationships. It's a peculiar thing. And these kids as a group are able to put things in drawers, mentally and emotionally, and just put them away. And really challenging and difficult things like romantic relationship breakups.
So you say to them in your breakup plan, essentially, don't touch it for 48 hours, which means no communication?
Yes, yeah. And I'm really clear with them that you need to not mess with this because all of your instincts are telling you to do things which will make it worse. And so trust me, nothing bad is going to happen if you don't deal with this for I say a week, but really if they can get through the first 24 hours, they're usually home free.
It's like quitting smoking, I guess. I don't know. Something like that. Do you typically tell parents that this is going on and that maybe they should monitor that impulse to get back online and say, apologize.
Yeah. I think, and the parents that I work with are really knowledgeable about their kids, or experts about their kids. They know who is up at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to Skype with their ex, friend or whatever. They know their kids' tendencies, and so we kind of problem solve, the three of us, like a parent, me and the child, about what are some of the risks and what kind of help do you need. And so we'll do a contingency plan for a little while. And then I really do like these things to resolve. I think our kids do really well having discussions with the person after the fact. This is what I felt. This is what I thought you were saying, that kind of thing.
It's a truth and reconciliation session.
Yes. Yeah. Reconciliation is super important. It's sort of like the bookend to the interaction. And if left to their own devices, rarely will they go back and reconcile and sort of close up the matter. It'll just kind of sit out there. And that might be fine if you're working with two people on the spectrum. They, whatever. But the rest of the world really expects there to be some closure or some finality to it.
Well, I wish that were true of the typical teens that I work with. I mean, usually it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, but not really. It's right below the surface and it hurts.
Right.
And then you bring in all your friends and it's not okay for them to be friends with your ex. And it gets so awful. I just wish that some other schools would take on this model, because we all know that teen relationships are the background noise of what's going on in every high school, and it's usually not handled very well. So kudos to you.
Yeah, well, you bring up kind of an interesting point, and this is what I really try to pass on to parents. And I say, this is my opinion, but I'm not a huge fan of high school relationships. I know a lot of parents who believe that it's essential for their kids. They think that, this is part of growing up. This is something I did. It's like doctors who, haze each other, haze their residents and those kinds of things. These sort of horrible activities that they believe are essential for learning the profession. I try to be really clear with the parents. I don't believe a high school relationship is necessary for normal, typical, healthy relational development in high school for these kids. I'm perfectly content with kids waiting until they feel like they want to pursue a relationship because of whatever value they get out of it. So that is advice. I think some parents disagree with me politely. Others are relieved when I say that to them. But I just want to make sure that I get that across to parents.
No, it's truly, and ultimately, of course, the kids are going to do what they're going to do, and I feel sorry often for the pressure they feel from their own peers and from society for them to be writing to me at age 12 and 13 and saying, what's wrong with me? I've never had
Sure.
a boyfriend or a girlfriend. What's wrong with me? There's
Right.
nothing wrong with you. There's something wrong with the culture that's telling you that you
Right.
need to be moving in this direction at this time.
Yeah. Interestingly, I really never get that statement from our students. There's a vague recollection that other kids their age might go on dates, but a real kind of lack of understanding about what that means and why somebody who's 12 would want to have a boyfriend or girlfriend. It just rarely ever comes up.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting. Okay, well, we're just about out of time, and I really
Okay.
wanted to just kind of focus in maybe on 3 tips that you might have for parents who have kids on the spectrum who are moving towards puberty and
Right.
through that transition, what they can expect if they haven't seen some of the behavior you've seen already, and how
Okay.
they can help their kids.
Okay. I'll try to limit this to just 3. I have about
If you've got
300.
5, if you've got 5, that's okay.
Well, I wanna be clear with parents of kids on the spectrum that Asperger's and autism and related disorders are developmental disabilities, which are include delays in social development. So it is my experience that kids on the spectrum do not typically have a drive for romantic relationships or those types of exclusive relationships at the same pace and rate and age as neurotypical kids. So it's not uncommon for the kids that I know and I work with to get all the way through high school and into college or into a job and then start to notice the opposite sex or the same sex for for the purpose of romantic relationship.
So what I hear you saying to parents is this is not necessarily something to be alarmed about, and you probably do best to not pressure your kid in any way that this is something they ought to be doing at this age if that's not where they're at.
Yeah, and I gotta be honest, I was trying to think of, are there any cases that I'm aware of where a parent was pressuring their kid to go get a girlfriend or boyfriend, of the group that I work with, and we're talking hundreds of parents, and I can't really think of one.
Okay.
Most parents I talk to are extremely relieved that they get, their peers who are parents are dealing with issues, and they themselves get a 5 to 6 year kind of reprieve.
Okay.
My message to parents is that's okay. That's typical development in this population from my experience. The second thing is I want to encourage parents to not take not take dating lightly. Most of our students, they might think about it as being kind of desirable, but the actual act of dating for many of them is not fun. For many of them, it's hard. It's hard for everybody to do well, but for them, it's confusing. And especially kids who don't have a strong base or reference of like friendships or the ability to form and maintain close personal friendships really struggle with dating. So I would say that there's a process here that if your kid wants to be dating, then they should probably be able to demonstrate that they can actually have a friend and maintain that friendship independently and be successful there.
That's a really good one, because I always
Stepwise.
say that the word friend is in the word boyfriend and girlfriend for a
Yeah.
good reason when I talk to kids and parents as well. It's
Right.
very good.
Yeah.
Got a third one?
A third one, yeah. I would like to remind parents and that dating activates a broad range of disabilities and difficulties in the spectrum population. It's not just a relationship thing, it's an organizational thing like we talked about. So setting up plans with another person is extremely challenging for this population. But it's also a sensory thing, because dating has with it a lot of expectations around proximity and touch and those kinds of things. So these are all areas, if your child is going to pursue dating and romantic relationships, that really need to be addressed and talked about.
This is really excellent. Before we turn our attention to saying goodbye, I want to give you an opportunity to let our listeners know. I know that you have a private practice as well, and that you're in the San Francisco Bay Area. Can you tell them where they could find out more about your work?
Yes, well, if you want to find out more about school, about Orion Academy, it's orionacademy.org, and they've got a nice website there. My practice is found at docschleg.com. That's DOCSCHLEG.com. And I have an office in Orinda and one in San Francisco. And the other thing, I have a Twitter feed, if you, if a professional Twitter feed, if you want to follow me there. And also in April, I have a book coming out, a parenting book for parents of teens on the spectrum. So be looking.
What is the title?
It's Parenting ASD Teens, a Guide to Making It Up as You Go Along. It's through Jessica Kingsley Publishers, and I was told April is the release date.
Well, I hope you will send me a review copy because I would love to blog about it.
Okay, yeah, of course I'll do that.
Thank you so much, Andrew, for spending some time with us today, and your work is really important, and I love the warmth and the humor that you bring to it. I'm sure your students are very appreciative of your friendship.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and I appreciate your insightful questions and helping me talk about this.
Thanks. This is Annie Fox for Family Confidential. To learn more about my work with tweens, teens, and parents, visit anniefox.com. And please tune in next time for a new Family Confidential podcast. Until then, happy parenting!